Hi, I'm dating coach Hayley Quinn, and in this video, I'm going to give you 7 really quick tips to become better at approaching women in groups. Now, if you're a woman watching this video, you might be like, do guys really need to learn about this stuff? And that's because often women simply don't realize that when they go out with a big group of their friends, that to the average guy who isn't this swashbuckling player, that they just really look really intimidating and that it can be hard to think of a good way to approach and connect with them. If you're a guy watching this though, it's really important that you try not to limit yourself to perfect scenarios where you get, one woman sat alone by herself with a t-shirt on that says approach me. Most of the time when you go out, women will be preoccupied, they'll be with friends. So this video really is about teaching you to roll with the punches and not be limited in terms of how you approach women in your life. So here's my first tip for approaching a group of women as opposed to a woman one-on-one. When you approach a woman one-on-one, you have to be somewhat aware of your body language because with your physical size and features, it might be easy to come across accidentally as intimidating towards her. When we're in a group though, we really want to go louder with your voice and bigger with your gestures. That's simply because to hold the attention of more than one person at a time, we need to put more energy into the interaction. This is why sometimes approaching groups, it can feel like slightly more of a struggle for the introverts out there. So remember, if you're approaching a group, we want to project your voice, that means speak more loudly, utilize pauses in what you're saying, and use your hand gestures as well to take up slightly more space. My second tip is if you watched my recent video on approaching women who are in a pair, you'll know that this tip is going to be relevant here too, which is to successfully approach a group, you definitely don't try to just focus in immediately on one member and ignore the rest of the group. Obviously, she's going to care much more about what her friends think and the time that she's having with them rather than impressing a new guy who's just walked up to them. That's why when you first approach a group, it's really important that you ingratiate yourself with all members of that group. That means smiling and making eye contact, maybe giving a wave, shaking hands, a very gentle touch to the shoulder. Do this with all group members so it's clear that the conversation that you're about to deliver is directed at everyone, not just the one woman that perhaps you're most attracted to. My third tip is also when it comes to your opening line, I would make that one about the whole group as well, because again, once they get to know you, if you feel like you've got a good connection with them and they see that you're playful and fun and you're not socially awkward, they may well feel comfortable enough to relax and you can then start speaking to people more individually. But at the beginning, it's really important to show that you're not there being really outcome orientated on needing to get this one woman's number, but instead you're in flow, you're having fun, you're being sociable, and you're talking to the whole group. So in terms of addressing the whole group, you want to think of something to say that works for everyone. It could be an observation like, wow, you guys are definitely having the most fun out of everybody in this room. It could be, I just had to ask, you all have such different styles. I'm kind of trying to work out how you all might know one another. Whatever you choose to focus on, you want to use an opening line that incorporates the whole group and that everybody can participate in. My fourth tip for you is to then quite quickly establish how everybody knows one another. The simplest and easiest way you can do this is just by asking, so how do you all know one another? Like, so what brought you guys together this evening? Or what brought you ladies, or what brought you folks together this evening? In doing that, you establish their social relationship and you also start to get some feedback here as to whether it's a good idea to continue the conversation. If they are quite, as a group, not just one individual, quite cold and standoffish and unwilling to give you this information, this is your feedback loop to get out of there, and they're just not socially open to talking to you. This doesn't mean, by the way, that there's anything wrong with you. It's just they want to focus on whatever they've got going on that evening. Instead, if they are able to start discussing how they know one another, this is a great conversation starter. It can involve the whole group, and it can also be a way that you can see who's most socially receptive to you. Do one or two members quite quickly step forwards and start chatting to you whilst the others seem more disengaged? You want to start to use your social intelligence here to read the situation and then focus in on the members of the group who are most open to talking to you. My tip 5 is this could also be quite a good time to crack a joke about how you're not that guy. And again, show some vulnerability here. I know this will sound counterintuitive and you'll think that this dating advice is effectively feeding you to the lions, but I promise it's not. It's this idea that if you can just tell them like, oh, oh, I'm glad you guys are all so nice. Like, I almost didn't come over and talk to you because I don't like to think of myself as that guy who's coming along and interrupting someone's evening. If you can say that with confidence and authenticity because it's true for you, that vulnerability, instead of it being something that other people will look negatively about, it actually really clearly illustrates that you're not that guy that's going to be hanging out and not reading social cues, and it creates empathy for you. So this is a really smart thing to do in group interactions. My 6th tip is to read the social situation. When it comes to any interpersonal interaction, you can't really have a plan for it. You can have an idea and then you have to take feedback as to how things are going. As I said before, if people are really not receptive, you can let it go. If people are receptive though, you can do a couple of things. One of the most obvious ones is actually, if you're with another group of people, to introduce some of the groups to one another, or to introduce them to the friend that you're with. This really starts to build social cohesion. It shows that you're not trying to be covetous and, controlling and keep this group dynamic to yourself. It's friendly, sociable, and open. Also, the more people that you can pull into the interaction, rather than it being threatening to you, it actually just makes everything more fun, and therefore everyone feels better and they're more excited about who you are as a person. So again, at this stage in the interaction, if things are going well, it could be a great idea to introduce this new group you've met to the existing group you're already with. My 7th tip is you don't need to accomplish everything, not that you should be that goal orientated in one interaction. Often it may not feel natural or fluid when you're talking to a group of people to immediately go and start asking people for their contact details. If you can feel relatively confident that you're going to be sharing the same space at least for the next, say, 30 or 60 minutes, you can actually choose to end that conversation, take a view, and then if you feel the group or certain group members were particularly receptive, you can re-engage later on and pick up a topic of conversation that you were talking about previously. Often getting to know people in 2 or 3 smaller encounters rather than trying to hold everyone's attention, particularly in a bar or club, for one longer encounter is a much more effective way of building a connection and building that rapport. Well, I feel there's so much information I could give you on how to approach groups, but hopefully this has given you some serious tools to start working with if you're interested in how to develop not just more romantic connections, but also more social ones. If you want to build this area of your life, I would really recommend you head over to hayleyquinn.com/attraction. I've got some really good information in there, new videos and cheat sheets that will help you to really synthesize this knowledge, get practical and get out there to build your confidence and meet more women in real life.